One of the most dangerous beliefs that we can have is the belief that we're right. And the reason this is so dangerous is beliefs may be informed by reality, but they're certainly not bound to it. I've spent the last 3 decades of my life researching, studying, and practicing magic. And one of the most valuable insights that I've gained from this is this mirror that magic puts up to our world, to our society, to our lives, and how it informs our perspectives. One of the most valuable lessons that magic has to offer is the reminder that things are not always as they appear, and magicians take advantage of this all the time to make the seemingly impossible become possible. For example, a classic magic trick that you may have seen before, and one that perhaps you've performed yourself, uses a card with 1 dot on one side, 4 dots on the other side, 3 dots on this side, and 6 dots on that side. Now this would be amazing if you didn't already know how it's done. And it doesn't help that I already explained to you things are not always as they appear. We know on an intellectual level we can't have a card with 1 dot on one side, 4 dots on this side, 3 dots on this side, and 6 dots on this side. We know this, but that doesn't stop our assumptions from hijacking our beliefs. Taking a step back, we could see clearly that I can show you there's 1 dot on this side or 3 dots, depending on how I hold the card, depending on the perspective that I choose to share. The other side works the same way. I can show you that there's 4, or I could show you that there's 6, depending on the perspective that I choose to share. When we're not mindful of this natural tendency to overlook reality in favor of our limiting assumptions, that's when we can get really caught off guard, like when all the spots disappear and reappear over here. Isn't this fun? I'm so happy we have this time to be together. In fact, before we dive further into this topic and explore the implications that it can have for your life, I just want to take a moment to say to you, I'm so happy you are here. Pause and really take in these words. I'm so happy you are here. No matter where you are physically or emotionally, you have made a conscious decision to mentally check into the Pioneer Senior Success Training Program, a program designed to help you transition smoothly into the next chapter of your life. This is an opportunity that not everyone takes advantage of, and it's also not available to just anyone. So I'm going to say it again. I'm so happy that you, specifically you, are here. The purpose of our time together is to talk about perspective and understanding. But the reason we're talking about these things is to point towards something even more valuable: kindness. No one is as good as they think they are, and in a similar way, other people aren't as bad as we may think they are. Taking a step back to gain a wider perspective will empower us with more understanding, to bring more kindness into our work and into our relationships. Before we move on, I encourage you to take out a pen and paper, or open up a Word document or a notepad on your computer, phone, or tablet, and jot down your answer to this question. And I'm literally not going to do anything for a minute after I ask this question, so I encourage you to get these things out and actually do this reflection. The question is this: what does kindness mean to you, and what does it mean to be kind to others? I'll give you 1 minute to jot down a few of your ideas starting now. In a moment, I'm going to give you 4 questions that you can ask yourself in any given situation that, when answered honestly, can empower you with perspective and understanding to bring more kindness into your work and into your relationships. But before we dive into those questions, it's important that we understand a key point. And this story is a doozy. A number of years ago, I was on tour with a band as their opening act. The band was an experimental electronica trio, if you can imagine that, called The Ear, the Eye, and the Arm. I like to think of myself as the leg, because I helped with a lot of the leg work, carrying equipment to and from the tour van every night. In fact, I think that's the real reason they invited me onto this tour. It wasn't to be an opening act. It was to be a free roadie. Perspective. We started off in our home state of Massachusetts, made our way as far north as Burlington, Vermont, and as far down south as Washington, D.C. And during this tour, we stopped for a show in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And I had never been to Pittsburgh before, and I love new experiences, so I was really excited for this opportunity. We had just finished unloading all of the band's equipment from the tour van into the club. I just had to go out to the van and grab my suitcase. And it's here that the story takes a turn, because as soon as I got outside, I became abundantly aware that there were 2 street thugs lurking about. And I know what you're saying. I knew they were street thugs because I've watched television, and these were just like the ones on TV. They had hoods and everything. They were literally street hoodlums. My gut instinct was to retreat back to the safety of the club and wait for the street thugs to scamper off. But then I hesitated. And I hesitated because I thought, I don't actually know that those are street thugs. That's just society. That's just the media. That's just my assumptions hijacking my beliefs. So I ignored my assumptions. I ignored my fears. And I went to the van anyway. You know what happened, right? Yeah, I got mugged. Now, I had never been mugged before, so this was all very exciting. I love new experiences, but it happens very quickly. If you've ever been mugged before, you'll know it happens very quickly, and before I knew it, they were scampering off with my wallet, and I was still in a bit of a daze as I grabbed the suitcase from the van and went into the club just in time to be told that it was time to start my set. So I wander onto stage with my suitcase and I say, so I was just mugged outside. And everyone thought it was part of my act. They just laughed and laughed. I said, no, it's terrible to be here. I don't want to be in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania anymore. I want to go home. Now, one of the reasons I'm telling you this story is that it all happened very quickly. And once I had time to process what had happened, I realized something quite profound. I realized that these street thugs were actually rather nice to me. I wouldn't exactly say they were kind, but they were nice. And it was all in their words. Our words have power. They have the power to build others up, or they have the power to tear others down. And as they were mugging me, these street thugs did their part to help build me up just a little bit. This is what they said to me after pushing me up against the van. They said, "Stay cool. Give it up." Did you catch it? It's subtle. I missed it the first time, so I certainly won't fault you if you missed it. Stay cool. Give it up. You see, in order to stay cool, you have to already be cool. So really, these street thugs were complimenting me. They thought I was a pretty cool guy. So as a gesture of my appreciation, I gave them my wallet. As far as muggings go, this is probably the best possible scenario. The other reason I'm telling you this story is to demonstrate how even the most frustrating of circumstances can have something to teach us so long as we look at it with an eye of fascination to gain a bigger perspective. And I learned something quite profound that day in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I now know the true meaning of the name Pittsburgh Steelers. Yeah. I know, it's ridiculous. This is a true story, an absurd story, but a true story. And I used to tell this during one of my magic shows, just as a fun story to tell in the middle of the show. And one day someone came up to me after my presentation, and And he told me that he really loved the Pittsburgh story. And I'm always curious to know what's resonating most with people. So I asked him what it was that he found so valuable in it. And he said that if he had been in that same situation, he wouldn't have been able to find a way to laugh about it. Now, up until that point, I didn't think of this way of thinking as any way special. It's just where my mind naturally goes. But it really got me to thinking and reflecting on this, that you could take two different people and put them in the same situation. One person can walk away feeling frustrated and bitter, while the other person can walk away fascinated by the whole thing. The idea that I want to stress here is that being kind to yourself is just as important as being kind to others. And one way to do this is to bring more laughter into your day by being fascinated by life's challenges rather than frustrated by them. Another great way to be kind to yourself is to honor your truth. I knew I was walking into a bad situation. In this case, the situation was exactly what it appeared to be. But in my desire to demonstrate kindness to others by giving them the benefit of the doubt instead of being hijacked by assumptions and fears, I forgot to be kind to myself. So the question becomes, and I'm going to give you another minute to answer this one, what does it mean to be kind to yourself? I'll give you 1 minute to jot down a few of your ideas starting now. We know the value of being kind to ourselves and towards others, but we also know how easy it is to get frustrated in the context of everyday life. The question becomes, how do we anchor ourselves with perspective and understanding so that we can always remember to bring kindness into our work and into our relationships? One of the ways to do this is by implementing the 4-way test, which is a series of 4 questions that you can ask yourself in any given situation that, if answered honestly, will give you the perspective and understanding you need to stay focused on what matters most. The 4 questions are, is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? Reflecting on these questions can help you decide what is right in any given situation, helping you to think right and do right. Take a moment now and reflect on how these questions may impact your life if you ask them every time you are about to make a decision. I'll give you 1 minute to write down your thoughts on this, starting now. I encourage you to continue thinking about these questions. In fact, if you haven't done so already, I also encourage you to write them down. Maybe take a picture of them and make it the home screen on your phone or your computer. Maybe write it on a Post-it note and put it on the bathroom mirror. The idea is to put these questions at the center of your attention so that in moments of crisis, you no longer have to think about these questions consciously because they're already a part of your ingrained character. Before we go, I'd like to share with you a practical example of how this can play out in everyday life, because when crisis hits and we're frustrated, it can be so easy to forget to be kind and instead pass that frustration on to others. Maybe by complaining to them or yelling at them, blaming them for our frustrations, or perhaps even worse, just ignoring them altogether. The problem with passing frustration onto others is that it solves nothing, and if anything, it simply adds fuel to the frustrations that others are already carrying within them. Remember, things are not always as they appear, and everyone who comes into your life is walking in with their own story, a story that you know nothing about. I heard a story recently about a woman who was working on an assignment, and this was back in the 80s, so this was years ago, and she needed to make copies of a document for this assignment. The problem is, technology can be fickle. In being the 80s, the technology wasn't exactly the best, so the machine just was not working. And what happens when technology doesn't work? We can try many things. We can try hitting it. We can, thinking violence is the answer. We can try unplugging it and plugging it back in, thinking that we can trick it into working. And when all else fails, we pray to the gods of technology, hoping for divine intervention. This woman was getting frustrated, and she had tried everything. And imagine if this was you. You know what you want to do, but the technology just isn't working. So you're worrying about disappointing your colleagues, you're worrying about infuriating your boss, and you're just getting more and more frustrated. Thankfully, there was this guy standing behind her in line, waiting patiently to use the machine, and seeing this woman hitting the machine, unplugging it, plugging it back in, praying, he finally decided to step in to help her out, and somehow he was able to get the machine working, and she got the copies. How do you think she responded, being so high in frustration? Do you think she complained to him about the incompetence of technology, maybe yelled at him for not stepping in sooner, or maybe just ignored him altogether because her frustration level was simply so high? We've all seen these reactions at some point in our lives, but this woman did none of those. Instead, she simply looked to him, and with a smile, she said, "I'm so happy you're here." Simple words, kind words, words that cost nothing to give, but when received, have the power to encourage others. Your words truly do have that power to lift people up or tear them down. Everyone who's coming into your life is coming with their own story, a story that you know nothing about. Choosing kindness in your work and in your relationships will do far more to build goodwill and trust than being hijacked by assumptions and fears and blame ever will. Please do not underestimate this. Your decision to choose kindness today and every day has far-reaching consequences. For example, a friend of mine recently told me that he made a list of the 5 most influential people in his lives. These are the people who were responsible for helping him to become the person that he is today. On this list was a friend who made an impact on him. There was a teacher who believed in him, an uncle who gave him an opportunity. There was a boss who encouraged him to advance in his career. And there was even a complete stranger who saved his life, even though at the time she didn't realize that's what she was doing. Here's how it happened. This was about 30 years ago or so, and my friend was really going through a hard time. He was really struggling. Things just didn't work out as he had hoped. He was really depressed and he couldn't figure out any other way out, so he thought it would be best if he just wasn't around. And when he came to this decision, he was on a business trip, and his plan was to just finish the assignment he was working on, and instead of going home, he would commit suicide. When we reach this level of frustration, just when we need to reach out to others the most, is so often just when we withdraw from others. Maybe we don't think other people will understand, maybe we don't want to be a burden on others, or maybe we just think we're alone in whatever it is we're going through. Whatever the case may be, my friend didn't reach out to anyone. He decided to kill himself, and he made his plan and set it into action. When his assignment was nearly finished, he just had one last task to complete before he could go through with it. And to complete this task, he had to make some copies. So he found himself in an office building standing behind a frustrated woman at a copy machine. She was hitting the thing, she was unplugging it, plugging it back in, she was praying, she was getting really frustrated. Meanwhile, my friend is just standing there waiting patiently so he could get his plans underway. Finally, he stepped in to help her out, was able to get the copies for her. And instead of ignoring him, instead of complaining or yelling at him, she simply looked at him with a smile and said, "I'm so happy you're here." Simple words, kind words, words that cost nothing to give, but when received, have the power to encourage others. Your words have power. They have the power to build others up, but they also have the power to tear others down. Everyone who walks into your life is walking in with their own story, a story that you know nothing about. Because remember, things are not always as they appear. The question becomes, are you doing your part to build others up? Or are you unknowingly tearing others down? Before we end our time together, I have a favor to ask of you, and it's a favor that will help both you and me. Please visit the website #positivity.com/feedback to provide feedback on this presentation. This is valuable for me because it helps me to know what's most resonating with folks, and it's also valuable for you because it encourages you to reflect on our time together. As one of my mentors, John Maxwell, reminds me all the time, people say that the best teacher is experience, but that's not necessarily true. Rather, it's reflective experience that can be the best teacher. We know the value of being kind towards ourselves and towards others, but we also know how easy it is to lose sight of this. Using the 4-way test as a decision-making tool will empower you with the perspective and understanding you need to bring more kindness into your work and into your relationships. And when you do, that's when real magic becomes possible. The key is to practice this every day. In fact, it's kind of like changing the shape of an ice cube. First, you have to melt the ice, decide on the new shape you want the ice to be, and then refreeze it into that new shape. And bringing more perspective and understanding into our lives is this same kind of process. In fact, I'm encouraged by the words of the Pittsburgh Steelers when they told me to stay cool, give it up. We have to give up our old limiting assumptions that hijack our beliefs. Let them just melt away. And decide instead to stay focused on perspective and understanding. And then practice this every day until it freezes into an ingrained character, helping you to keep your future in focus so you never have to say to yourself, "I wish I woulda." Thank you so much for participating in this program. It has been a true joy having this opportunity to be together. My name is Jonas Kane, and remember, I'm so happy you're here.